What if the origin story of humanity has an origin story of its own? What if the oldest tale in the world was buried because it was too dangerous to remember? For centuries, the Vatican has pointed to the shadows, warning us of demons and the devil. But what if their deepest, most guarded fear wasn't a fallen angel at all? What if it was something far older? Something literally carved into clay thousands of years before the Bible was even a concept? I'm talking about the whispers of the Anunnaki, and the discovery that suggests our history was edited. Tonight, we are investigators on a case that spans millennia. We're following a trail of clues that leads to one shocking conclusion, that the Bible may not be the first draft of our story, but the final edit. And if you're ready to see the evidence, let's start with the first piece of evidence: the clay that refused to be silenced. Part 1. The Discovery. The Case of the Buried Library. Imagine the dust of the Iraqi desert, 1849. An archaeologist's brush carefully clears away the sand, not to find gold or jewels, but something infinitely more valuable: a library. But this wasn't a library of books. It was a fortress of clay. Thousands of tablets, stacked in rows, frozen in time for over 2 millennia. This was the Royal Library of Nineveh, and what was written inside didn't just add to history, it threatened to rewrite it. Because these tablets contained stories, epic tales like Gilgamesh and Atrahasis, and as scholars began to translate them, a chilling pattern emerged. They read about a great flood sent by angry gods, a hero warned to build a boat, animals loaded 2 by 2, birds released to find dry land, a sacrifice of gratitude after the waters receded. This wasn't just a similar theme. This was the story of Noah, beat for beat. But this version was written centuries earlier. The question was no longer if the stories were connected, but why one was celebrated in churches and the other was buried in a desert. This was the first crack in the foundation. But to understand the full scale of the cover-up, we had to look at the very first story of all.
The sequence is identical. 7 days. Light from dark. Land from sea. But the violence is gone. Instead, a single God speaks the world into being with calm authority. This isn't a coincidence. It's a conscious edit. Scholars believe that during the Babylonian exile, Jewish scribes encountered these myths, and they performed a masterstroke. They took a chaotic, polytheistic story and refined it. They stripped out the dragon, the battle, the committee of gods, and created a serene, monotheistic origin. They weren't just telling a story. They were building a brand. A brand with one unquestionable leader. This was the moment a shared regional myth was transformed into a unique divine revelation. But the editors made one mistake. They left the original structure intact. The 7 days. The sequence. It was all still there, like ghostly scaffolding holding up the new construction. And if they rewrote the creation of the universe, what did they do with the creation of us? The answer is even more personal. Part 3. The Smoking Gun. Adam's clay and Eve's rib. This is where it gets personal. Your origin story. In Sumerian texts, the gods weren't divine parents. They were divine project managers. They were tired of manual labor, so the goddess Ninhursag got her hands dirty. She molded figures from clay, and the god Enki breathed life into them. Humanity, in their view, was created for one purpose: to serve. Now, hold that thought and read Genesis.
The Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. The parallel is undeniable. The core image, a divine being shaping a human from earth, is identical. But once again, look at the edit. The Sumerian version is transactional. We made you to work. The biblical version is relational. God creates a companion. The motive is cleansed, but the raw material, the clay, the dust, remains the same. And then there's the rib. In a Sumerian myth, the goddess Ninti. Sound familiar? Moses comes down from Mount Sinai, carrying stone tablets, the 10 Commandments. Once again, law is delivered from the divine to mankind, etched into stone. But here's the master edit. In the old myths, the tablets could be stolen or lost by the gods. Power was fragile, transferable. In the Bible, the law is an eternal covenant. The authority is no longer in a physical object that can be lost, but in an unbreakable bond between one God and his people. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The chaotic council of many gods was streamlined into one voice. The transferable tablets became a permanent covenant. The motive was control. By creating a unique, divinely authored narrative, you centralize spiritual and political power. You become the sole gatekeeper to truth. And gatekeepers have one primary job: to control what gets in. Which is why, for centuries, the echoes of Sumer had to be silenced. Conclusion: the whisper in the clay. So, did the Vatican fear the Anunnaki more than the devil? Perhaps, but not as monsters. They feared them as a competing narrative. A devil can be resisted and cast out, but a memory? A story that questions uniqueness? That is a far more insidious threat. The clay tablets of Mesopotamia are not heresy. They are a reminder that humanity's search for meaning is a continuous, collaborative project. We have always told stories to understand the sky, the water, and our own souls. The Sumerians wrote theirs in clay. The Hebrews carved theirs in stone. Seeing them side by side doesn't weaken faith. It enlarges it. It places our story within the vast, awe-inspiring tapestry of human wonder. It shows us that the desire to understand where we come from is the most human thing of all. The Vatican's fear wasn't of the past, but of losing control of the future. But you can't silence clay. The truth has a way of waiting in the desert until we are ready to listen. What do you believe? Is the Bible the first word or the most powerful